10. There was no disagreement when old Dyson decided that the party could not stay where they had been camped. Seraphina wanted to at least gather the bodies of the Peace Warders together for some sort of respectful burial, but old Dyson cared nothing for the corpses. These men had intended capture for him and death for his companions, and so he felt justified in leaving them out in the open to be feasted upon by the carrion eaters of the forest. They searched for the Peace Warders' mounds, but oddly, there was no trace of the animals. No one could recall when last any of them had seen, and even the sharp-eyed Achilles could find no trail. They quickly gave up and, mounting their own steeds, raced off into the dead of night. Old Dyson remained tense throughout the ride, not because he feared for himself so much, for the others. Especially Lila. Malik had surely noted her closeness to the farmer, and the high priests would no doubt seek to take advantage of their relationship, even more so than the blood ties between old Dyson and his brother. Thinking of Mendelin, old Dyson glanced back at his sibling's shadowed form. What little he could make out of Mendelin's countenance revealed the same anxiousness the older brother had noticed before. Mendelin appeared particularly struck by the carnage, even more than Seraphina. Old Dyson had caught him standing near one body after another, shaking his head and reaching out into the darkness. The shock of the incident clearly continued to haunt Mendelin, even now. With a grunt, old Dyson returned his gaze to the black path ahead. Perhaps it'd be better to leave Mendelin somewhere along the way. He wished no harm to come to his brother, nor did he want Mendelin's fragile state to cause any difficulty for him later on. Old Dyson had always known his brother was not as strong physically as him, but he had believed Mendelin of a sturdy mind. Evidently, he'd been wrong. He took another glance over his shoulder. Yes. Mendelin looked like a man haunted. Something would have to be done. That did not change. Faster and faster they rode, racing like the wind through the shrouded night. Mendelin tried desperately to stare only ahead, but even in that direction, he could not entirely escape them. They were 5, his brother and the rest. That was all that there should have been. 5 people, 4 steeds. But with the 5 there now, traveled nearly a score more riders that only Mendelin could apparently see. The translucent wisps of white and gray fluttered along each side of the party. They shimmered in and out of existence. They had gaunt, pale faces, and wore the helms and breastplates of the Peace Warders. When he did not dare glance in their direction, he was to be rewarded with the same unblinking, hollow-eyed stares, as if the ethereal figures awaited some word from him. But Mendelin had no words for these ghosts of the men his brother and Achilles had slain. No words, save a silent plea for the shades to depart. Yet, not only did they not leave, it seemed to Mendelin that they clustered nearest to him. The phantasms kept perfect pace with the anguished farmer, riding astride invisible mounds. Menlin supposed that if any of the animals had been killed in the process, then they, too, would have joined the ghostly charge. That notion made him chuckle nervously, which brought a concerned glance from nearby Achilleos. He thought of telling the archer what was happening. Achilleos, perhaps, the only one who might understand. Hunter would recall the unsettling stone, who would make the connection, just as Mendelin had. But if Achilleos had any good sense, which Mendelin believed he did, then the blonde archer would immediately keep his distance from the hapless farmer. Mendelin certainly would not blame him. He wanted to be as far away from himself as possible. However, since it was not possible to do that, all he could hope was that, with time, the shades would go to whatever rest they were supposed to go. Yes, he could hope that would happen, but Mendelin doubted he would be so lucky as that. Night gave way to a mist-covered day, but although Achilleus suggested that they stop, Oldiason chose to press the horses and his companions until what he believed nearly noon. Only when they came across a stream surrounded by high canopied trees did he finally call a halt. Even old Diason felt weary by this point. Dismounting, he immediately went to help Lila down. Chilios did the same for Sarantina. Mendelin slipped off his own mound and rushed to the stream to drink. However, barely had old Dyson's brother started to thrust a hand toward the clear water when suddenly he withdrew it, as if bitten. The younger son of Demes stared off into the distance, then, blinking, looked back to the rest. "Water is tainted," he said somewhat hesitantly. "Best to not drink it. At the very least, we would become very ill." "How do you know?" asked Sarantina. Mendelin frowned, acting to old Diason like a child caught in a lie. I saw some fish, more than one, float by. They were dead and mottled. Looked like they died of sickness." "I've seen the like," interjected Julius. "If what Mendelin describes is accurate, then we best not drink." "But there is nothing to fear," declared Lila. Stepping from old Dyson's side, she looked up at him. "You can surely deal with something so simple as this." "Deal with it?" "Make the water pure, naturally." The others eyed her in disbelief, but old Diason had some trouble with what she said. But the longer she held his gaze, the more he considered the possibility. "All right." He strode to the stream, glancing only briefly at his brother. Mendelin put out a warning hand, but old Dyson sensed Lila watching and so continued past his brother without a word. He could do this for her, he decided. Each time, it had been her confidence, her love, that had shown him the way. This would be no different. His fingers touched the water, Droplets fluttered over his hand as he concentrated, willing the stream to be clean of taint. While Dyson repeated the desire over and over in his head until finally deciding that either he had succeeded or it had all been a waste of time. As he drew back his hand, Seraphine asked, "But how will we know if it worked?" Once again, Lila proved her faith in old Dyson. Without hesitation, she slipped past him and knelt by the stream. This was too much for old Dyson. "Lila, no!" But in one swift motion, she brought her cupped hands to her lips and drank fully the contents. Old Dyson stood ready to help her, fearful that he had failed this time, and thus risked the life of the one most dear to him. To his surprise, though, it was Madeline who sought to ease his concerns. "The stream. Dyson. The stream. It's clear of taint now. No need to worry, I swear, brother." Old Dyson did not ask how Madeline knew this, yet something in his sibling's voice made him believe. "He speaks the truth," the noble woman declared. "I am all right, my love. Trust me." He seized Lila, holding her tight. "Don't ever do that again," he breathed in her ear. "Especially not because of me." "But I knew that your power protected me. Protected all of us. Was I not correct? Just don't." "Well, I, for one, need a drink after that," Achilles uttered loudly, leading the horses forward. "As do these fine creatures." His action brought normalcy back to the party. Old Dyson and the rest moved upstream of the animals and began to take their fill. Achilles took care of the horses, then joined the others. But as he rose from satiating his thirst, the archer suddenly looked past the stream, clearly staring at something in particular. Old Dyson peered after him, but he saw nothing. "I'll be back shortly," Achilles muttered. Then the hunter darted across the stream, vanishing a moment later among the trees. Seraphine stepped up next to old Dyson. "Should we go after him?" The farmer knew his friend too well. Even he would have been hard-pressed to keep pace with Achilles when it came to seeking some prey in the woods. "Likely he just saw some rabbit or something he wants to bring back for our dinner. Nothing to worry about. You heard him. He'll be just fine." It was a tense several minutes that passed before Achilles finally reappeared. Despite the fact that surely he had run a good pace, the hunter was not at all winded. His expression, though, was anything but pleasant. There's a town nearby, barely an hour's pace on foot, much less that on a horse. Lila, who had been sitting on a rock, leapt to her feet. "A town? That is not possible." Achilles cocked his head as he glanced at the distraught noblewoman. "Not only is it possible, my lady, but it's Partha." Now, everyone else's expression mirrored that of Lila. "How can that be?" blurted Madeline. "We did not ride that direction." "I know that, but it's definitely Partha. I spoke to one of the young locals." At least one thing now began to make sense to old Iacin. Is that the reason you ran off? I saw a bit of movement and didn't want to take the chance of losing him. Thought it was a bandit. It was only a boy. Cedric, he said his name was. He was out trying to hunt. For the first time since his return, Achilles allowed himself a brief smile. And he's not bad. Took me a bit to keep on his trail. The boy's light-footed. Paying the archer's judgment of the boy's skills no mind, old Dyson tried to determine just how the band could have possibly come around in what was nearly a circle at this point. Partha should have been far, far behind them now. Malik, he finally muttered, as the others looked to old Iacin. Don't you see? It has to be the high priest. It smells of some spell. Who else could it be? Violet joined his cause. Yes! Surely him! And knowing that, we must certainly not fall into his trap by going to the town. We must flee from its vicinity immediately. But Cedric hardly seems the cleric's tool, argued Achilles, and the people of Partha have the reputation of being good and fair folks. It matters not what the people are like, she insisted in turn. They will be pawns for him to use against old Iacin. That is what we need to keep in mind. Somewhat to the surprise of old Iacin, Serenthina supported the other women. She's right, Achilles. There's nothing natural about this turn. Malik must have intended something awful. He looked to his brother, who was mute on the subject. Curiously, rather than be of a mind to follow Lila's sound advice and leave the likely trap behind, old Dyson found himself eager to enter Partha. If Malik hoped to surprise him there, he would find his supposed quarry more than willing to finish their previous encounter. We go to Partha. His declaration was met with a variety of expressions. Achilles' most eager, Lila's most damning. A fire such as old Iacin had never witnessed burned in her eyes. However, it lasted but a breath before the noble woman caught herself. Trembling, she exhaled, then nodded. To Partha, Lila agreed, finally smiling. To the edge of an abyss and beyond. So long as I'm with you, my love. He was grateful for her change of heart. Her anger had only been fear for him. Old Iacin surmised. After all, it was he whom Malik desired to capture. But it was she and the others whom the High Cleric seemed to think expendable. Old Iacin would make certain that, should Malik strike, they were again protected. He could do no less, since it was because of him that they would also ride into potential danger. With Achilles taking the lead, the five rode toward the town. As the hunter had indicated, the party had stopped just beyond the sight of Partha. Indeed, it took them less than the hour Achilles had suggested to reach the edge of town. Partha was much larger than Sarum or even Tolson. For the first time in his life, old Dyson beheld buildings 4 stories high, dwarfing even the barns of the wealthiest of his neighbors. Their stone and wood exteriors had been smoothed over with plaster to give them an extravagant look. Roofs were arched and made of wood tiles overlapping one another. The streets? The streets were made of stone, not mud. Wagons and horses clattered along their way, raising a racket akin to thunder. There were more people in Partha than old Diason had probably seen in all his life, and many were dressed in outfits that made him feel like a beggar. In fact, of all 5 of them, only Lila looked at all appropriate to be seen by the inhabitants. Someone called out to them, aware that none of them had ever been to Partha. Old Dyson stiffened in the saddle. However, it was no trap, but rather a youth who ran directly up to the side of Achilles' steed. "Oh there, Cedric," the hunter called down. He tousled the boy's mop of hair. "I told you we'd be along soon." "And I called bother, I did," Cedric returned breathlessly. Sure enough, behind the lad came an august gentleman, at least a decade older than old Dyson, and dressed in flowing brown and black robes that immediately stirred distrust in the farmer. Was Cedric's father a cleric of some sort? "Calm yourself," Achilles quickly said. "'Tis a traitor, much like Cyrus. Probably even knew him, in fact." The boy was cracked. "This them said?" asked the would-be hunter's parent. The steely-jawed figure swept back silver and black shoulder-length hair and studied the newcomers. His eyes paused on Lila, but froze on Saranthina. "I know you, though you be all growing up. You be Cyrus's little girl. Sarah, was it?" "Saranthina," she responded, her face becoming overcast. Cedric's father immediately noted this. His tone more formal, he said, "I'm sorry." "Saranthina," she responded, her face becoming overcast. Cedric's father immediately noted this. His tone more formal, he said, "I'm sorry, lass. I shall not ask you about it." Silent Saranthina nodded gratefully. Other townfolk had begun to pause in the vicinity, curious about the new arrivals. Part of that curiosity clearly had to do with the man greeting them, whose status in Partha was surely prominent. "Friends, my name is Ethan ul Garul, and although I regret the passing of my old comrade, I heartily welcome those of kin and companionship to him." Old Dyson eyed Achilles. They both seemed very certain that we are coming. "I took a chance that you'd say yes. That was all. When Cedric mentioned that his father was an important merchant, I used Cyrus's name. My apologies for that, Sari. But because I recalled how he seemed to know everyone in the region who shared his trade. Cedric said that he would run and tell his father about us and tell him what I said about the old man. Many's a good haggle I had with Cyrus, threw in Master Ethan, eyes twinkling at the old memories. Anyway, After our path led us so near, I figured destiny wants us here. Malik wants us here, Achilles. Remember that. My friend, called the merchant, clearly seeking to prevent an argument between the two. Is there something wrong? Nothing that can be spoken of here, old Diason remarked in a low voice. It'd be best if we spoke in private, Master Ethon. Your headman should also hear. As I am also elected leader of Partha, that shall be a simple matter to deal with. But come, who do I have the pleasure of meeting? I knew dear Saranthina as a child, and there's no mistaking her beauty, even now. You, he gestured at old Dyson, have a vague familiarity about you, too. But the others do not. Ethon's eyes again lingered over Lila. Some, especially not. And am I known for my memory? For faces? I am old Diason. Old Diamond. Diomedes of Sarum. A strong-hearted, outspoken man of the earth. You look his part, too. You'd be his firstborn, if I'm not mistaken? Acknowledging the older man's excellent memory, old Diason introduced Mendlin and Achilles, then grudgingly, Lila. He expected the merchant to fawn over her, but Master Ethon merely bowed and said, By the garments and the face, you would be from the north of the great city, yes? She dipped her head in turn. Yes. Cedric's father clearly expected more of an answer, but when Lila remained quiet, he took it in as much stride as he had Saranthina's silence. Instead, he looked to the group as a whole. Well, now that we are friends, you shall come with me to my humble home. At first, old Dyson wanted to turn Ethon's offer down, but the man meant well. But this was not a social visit. Yet, if he was both its prominent citizen and its leader, then there was no one better to warn concerning any possible threat to his people. Old Dyson only hoped that Cyrus's old friend would not throw his daughter and the rest into a cell once he had learned the truth. After all, it was they who brought the danger, in a sense. As Ethon was on foot, the party dismounted, then led their horses after him. Old Dyson noted that the populace now treated the five as they were visiting, bowing as they passed. Master Ethon was clearly a man highly respected not only for his position, but for himself. That the man had come without a personal guard bothered old Dyson. Were the people of Partha that trusting? Or was there something more sinister involved? If it was Malik's doing, it was a very convoluted trap. Old Dyson could see neither rhyme nor reason to it. These seemed good people, honest people. In addition to bowing, many of them also nodded pleasantly at the group. Some of those behind the party had already begun returning to their own tasks, clearly not at all suspicious of the strangers. I have not been in Sarum for many years, announced Ethon to his guests as they walked through the busy streets. How fares it? It was always a tranquil stop. I admit, I used to go there in part because I savored the peaceful nature of it as much as the heated bargaining with Master Cyrus. There was a fierce storm there recently, Medlin interjected. Old Ison quickly glanced at his brother, but saw that Medlin intended no further comment. Indeed! I suppose that would be the most exciting thing to happen in Sarum. Lucky for you, I love Partha, but there are so many matters on which to keep a careful eye. You know, at times, I would have gladly exchanged places with your father, Mistress Saranthina. Old Diason decided to check something. And do the clerics of the temple and the cathedral offer any help with guiding your efforts here? Them? Looking over his shoulder at Old Diason, the merchant chuckled. Hasn't been a blessed one of them in Partha for over a year. They have nothing we want. We're quite satisfied with our lot. They can save their words for someone who wants to hear them, if you'll pardon me for saying so. Old Dyson nodded in appreciation, Master Ethon's words verifying what he had so far noted about Partha and its inhabitants. He saw robust men and women cheerfully going about their chores and taking a break to eat or converse with friends. He saw clean streets of stone and well-kept structures of both wood and rock. There was no one who was not dressed neatly, whether in simple robes or in more elegant garments. It was a good town with good people. That was not to say that all was perfection in Partha. There were infirm and maimed among the inhabitants. An elder, with barely a tooth remaining, hobbled along on one leg and a crutch. Old Ison also saw a young boy whose left arm was a shriveled version of his right, clearly a defect at birth. Another man with the look of the farmer that the son of Domedes knew so well from his own face bore savage scars across his arms and neck from what had likely been some accident. None of them appeared to be shunned by their neighbors, and, in fact, all had companions assisting them. Partha, under Ethon, was evidently a very tolerant town, something even Sarum could have learned from. He looked again at the child. The poor limb reminded him of his youngest sister, Amelie. In her case, the right arm had been of proper length, but it had been bent back and had always been thin as a piece of straw. Yet Amelie had been the most cheerful of the family, the most wanting to help. The boy passed out of sight. Old Dyson gritted his teeth at the bitter memory. Men, like Malik, walked the earth living as lords, while children suffered because of either chance or some capricious spirit, perhaps. He stopped in his tracks. Mendelin? His brother hesitated. What is it? Here. The older brother thrust the reins of his animal into Mendelin's hand, then whirled back in the direction from which they had come. Unaware of what was taking place behind him, Master Ethon started pointing out some of Partha's landmarks. It may interest you to look upon that crested building yonder. Lila said nothing as he passed, but old Dyson caught a smile of understanding. Saranthina and Achilles barely had the chance to register him before he was far behind the party. Making the best of his height, old Dyson looked among the locals. Most paid him no mind, but a few watched the stranger with mild interest. Old Dyson grew frustrated as the object of his search evaded him. He tried to recall just where he had last seen. There! Heart-pounding, the son of Domedes pushed past a startled shopkeeper in the midst of arranging his wares. Ahead, stood a woman he recognized from earlier. As he neared, she turned. Next to her, the young boy with a ruined arm followed suit. Now ignoring the woman, old Dyson knelt down in front of the child. "May I see your arm, please?" With the innocence of his age, the boy stretched it forward as far as it could go. However, his mother naturally looked concerned and pulled him back out of the newcomer's reach. Old Dyson glanced up at her. "Please, I mean no harm. My sister was like this. I won't harm him. Just let me study it for a moment." She had no reason to do as he asked. The woman's expression softened, and, with a nod, she allowed old Dyson to examine the arm. His fingers gently probed the limb. Up close, he saw that it was even worse condition than his sister's had been. Thinking of Amelia again brought a sudden rush of emotion to old Dyson that only at the last did he understand had been bottled up inside him for all those many years. Tears drowned out his vision. He wished he could have done more for his sister, for his entire family. With all the power that seemed to wield now, he could have perhaps saved some of them from the monstrous wasting disease. Tears drenched his face. Without realizing it, he kept his hold on the boy's withered limb. To old Dyson, though it was as if time had turned backward, and he now clutched Amelia's arm, she, of all the family, had been most mistreated by life. First being born so, then dying before she had much of a chance to experience anything. His mind filled with images of his lost sister. But with one difference. She had a healthy body now. 2 healthy arms. He imagined her catching things. Or better yet, hugging him tight. Only blatantly did old Dyson sense that someone was hugging him. And that brought him back to the present, where he realized it was the young boy with 2 good arms. Old Dyson looked past the child to his mother. She in turn stared at him with an expression of disbelief. Tears ran down her cheeks. Behind her, several other townsfolk had gathered. They too eyeing the farmer with astonishment. Disengaging himself from the child, while Dyson looked at the people surrounding him. Harsh visions of the reactions in Sarum haunted him, and he stepped back in concern. I didn't mean to. But he had meant to. He had noticed the child and been filled with a sudden desire to see if he could do for the boy what he had not been possible for Amelie. As it turned out, old Dyson had been able to do just what he had hoped. And now, Parther too would turn on him. Call him a sorcerer, or worse. The boy's mother lunged at him and covered the stunned farmer with kisses and hugs. Thank you! Thank you! Beyond her, one man in the forefront of the growing throng bowed. Another followed suit. Then another, and another, and another. Someone then chose to go down on one knee. That became the impetus for the rest to do the same. Within moments, everyone around Eldiason knelt before him, as if he were a king. Or more.